Today, the Justice Department announced it is suing the state of Georgia over its voter suppression law. Now, during the news conference, Attorney General Merrick Garland made it clear the federal government will not stand by while the civil rights of Americans are violated. Now, Georgia's Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, just last week, he announced more than 100,000 names will be purged from the state's voter rolls. And he is committed to making this and other voter suppression tactics a reality. Governor Brian Kemp released a statement. Joe Biden, Stacey Abrams, and their allies tried to force an unconstitutional elections power grab through Congress and failed. He went on to say, well, as Secretary of State, I fought the Obama Justice Department twice to protect the security of our elections and won. I look forward to going 3 for 3 to ensure it's easy to vote and hard to cheat in Georgia. Well, Governor Kemp, for whom are you making it easier to vote? The bill you signed into law includes 16 provisions to specifically target Metro Atlanta, an area which just happens to be the largest black voting age population in the entire state of Georgia. Well, joining me now is Georgia State Representative B. Nguyen and co-founder of Black Voters Matter, Cliff Albright. Representative Nguyen, let's start with you. This law eliminates 2/3 of drop boxes in the Atlanta area. Why is that a challenge for voters of color?
Look, when we were able to use drop boxes during the pandemic last year, we saw the majority of voters taking advantage of these secure drop boxes, which were surveyed 24/7, and they met the guidelines of being able to protect people's ballots. And there was no evidence of voter fraud when it came to those secure drop boxes. They were actually widely popular on both sides of the aisle. And Senate Bill 202 restricts the number of drop boxes. It requires 1 drop box per county, but it also says that if you have, it also says 1 drop box per 100,000 voters, which severely reduces the number in metro Atlanta counties. It does not account for equity and the population of the voting size. It also removes the drop boxes from outside and forces the drop boxes to be stored inside and surveyed by an actual person 24/7. And not only that, it cuts off the hours that you can use the drop box. So if you work late and you want to drop off your ballot, you cannot do it. It cuts off the drop boxes. It won't be available on election day. The Friday before election day is the last day that you can drop it off. So you're looking at restricting it for voters who have non-traditional working hours, for voters who have disabilities, and for voters in Metro Atlanta County who use those drop boxes.
And that is just one of the 16 provisions that we're talking about at the moment. Cliff, you heard about this lawsuit today on day 8 of your Freedom Ride. Now, states are suppressing the right to vote. The Senate filibustered voting rights. So is Merrick Garland America's Obi-Wan Kenobi? Is the Department of Justice our only hope?
Well, no, the Department of Justice isn't our only hope. It is one tool that we have, but it's not our only hope. We, at the end of the day, are one of our main hopes. That's why we did the Freedom Ride, is because we wanted to mobilize voters, community members, everybody, as many people as possible, to get involved in demanding our voting rights and demanding the passage of H.R. 1 S1, which is the For the People Act, as well as 2 other important pieces of voting rights legislation, H.R. 4, the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, as well as H.R. 51, which is the D.C. statehood. But at the end of the day, it's going to take a combination of strategies, because we have to be clear, the voter suppressors have used a combination of strategies. So we're going to have to use the litigation strategy, which we used. We sued Brian Kemp on day 1. In fact, minute 1, the ink had not dried on him signing it before we filed our litigation papers. And now the Department of Justice has done the same. So we need the litigation strategy. We need a mass mobilization strategy. We need people making phone calls and text messages and direct actions to demand that Democrats in the Senate, who have a majority, which, by the way, voters of color, black voters, brown voters, Asian American, AAPI voters, help to give the Democrats by risking our lives in order to send 2 senators to the U.S. Senate. They need to use the power that they have in order to pass these bills, but it's going to take a combination of strategies.
What you're talking about, the combination of strategies, is it's a flood the zone strategy, right? Like just make sure we show up in ways and capacities that overwhelm any of the tactics to block us from the right to vote. Representative Nguyen, though, that's what's happening in your state. That's what changed the state and had it effectively go blue. Is that, though, exactly the thing that the Republicans in the Senate are calling voter fraud?
There is no voter fraud. What they're afraid of is that we see that it works when we build broad-based coalitions here in Georgia that center voters of color who want to see change in our state. Because quite frankly, Republicans have not offered us any legislative solutions to improve the lives of Georgians. And as a result, we won under Republican rule. They made all of these rules in place for our voting system. They picked the machines, the legislation in place that dictated the rules of the election. We followed, we organized, and we overcame the current voter suppression laws that are in place. And when we won, they decided, instead of turning inside and figuring out what it is they need to change about their party to make more people vote with them, they decided to double down on the big lie, and they decided to spend all of their energy in suppressing the vote, because they know that when the people of Georgia come together, we are going to stand united on protecting our democracy, and we are going to stand united on thinking about policies like healthcare, public education, criminal justice reform to improve the lives of the people who live in this state versus what Georgia Republicans are currently doing right now.
And Cliff, what is it about the changes in the Atlanta suburbs that has Republicans in Georgia so worried?
Well, it's the changes in the suburbs. Obviously, it's a question of demographics, right? Obviously Georgia is getting more black, more brown, more API. But at the end of the day, demographics aren't destiny. We have to work to make those demographics turn out. We have to show folks the importance of these policies that we're fighting for. And this electoral system can, in fact, work not just for them to participate, but for them to have power. But that's the thing that the Republicans fear. At the end of the day, when Trump was complaining about these elections all across the country, it wasn't every place in Georgia he was complaining about. He was complaining about Fulton County primarily. On that phone call to Raffensperger, he was obsessed with Fulton County. In Michigan, he was obsessed with Detroit. In Pennsylvania, he was obsessed with Philadelphia. So we know what the problem is. They have a problem with areas that have black voters, predominantly black voters, and other voters of color. They're not even trying to hide what their true intentions are. But that's why, again, we need this federal legislation. That's why we called on a freedom ride. That's why I'm sitting in Washington, D.C. right now, because we have a major rally tomorrow here in Washington, D.C. for voting rights. At the end of the day, we are going to have to force all three branches, the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judiciary, to be responsive and to really go take a step further towards making this democracy what it's always pretended it is, by protecting what's our most fundamental right, and that's our voting rights.
When we mention, right, we talk about the suburbs, those used to be the strongholds for Republicans, right? The elusive white suburban woman voter, and now the demographics have changed. Representative Nguyen, you've announced that you're running for Georgia Secretary of State. What is the motivation? I think we've seen and heard enough about that, but you've also said that Brad Raffensperger is not our friend. I'll give you the final word before we have to go to break.
Look, the Secretary of State is not our friend. It is not that he is currently supporting Senate Bill 202, but he has a long-standing history of supporting voter suppression laws. Throughout the time that I have served at the Georgia General Assembly, he has endorsed laws that have made it harder for people to vote. He has gone as far as to say he doesn't support no excuse absentee ballot voting. He uses voter purging to aggressively remove voters from the voter rolls. And quite frankly, sending a letter in the mail and asking a voter to respond within 40 days is not enough. He doesn't act in good faith as a sitting Secretary of State. He has admitted no voter fraud. We conducted the most secure election in the history of our state. And yet here he is double speaking every single day, blaming Stacey Abrams, who wasn't even part of the legislative process to pass Senate Bill 202, and supporting a bill that dilutes him of his own power, the power that Georgia voters elected him to do. It is his responsibility to support Georgia voters, and he has not done that in any meaningful way.
That is a word. Representative B. Nguyen, Cliff Albright, thank you both for joining me tonight.